Okay, now my upper part is dry enough to go for another layer. And again, just really quick swiping. Some of my seaweed gets melted into this wash, but that's okay, because it doesn't all go away and it leaves hints, and that's what gives a richness to the depth. All right, now I am going to take some white watercolor ground, and I'm going to use an older brush for this, or a synthetic brush actually. It's not super old brush, it's just a synthetic, not too expensive number 3 brush, and a little bit diluted, actually not too much diluted. What I'm doing is painting some negative space of light peeking through the kelp. I don't know what it is, but I just really like the look. Oh, sorry, I hit my camera there with my brush. I just really like the look of really bright negative space light coming through foliage like this. I usually do this for tree foliage, but as I mentioned, this is basically underwater foliage. Same kind of thing. I've actually lost where her tail is in this as well, so I'm going to have to redefine that later. I'm keeping this rough. Again, because this is background, distant background stuff, in fact, because this is the most distant stuff with the light coming through there, right? And so it doesn't need to be sharp edge. In fact, it shouldn't be sharp edge. It should be softer, more diffuse. And as I'm doing this, I'm not just creating random blobs. I'm actually thinking of how the kelp shapes weave through in this, and how the light intersects with that. I like using watercolor ground to do this because it means that I can tint it afterwards with more glazes when I paint on top. if gouache was used, if white gouache, which is another white that a lot of watercolor artists use when they're trying to paint over on top. The problem I find with that is that the gouache is then going to lift with subsequent layers, and it mixes then with color rather than having a glaze on top of it, which this will let me do. Using white gouache is going to then reactivate when you try to do a wash on top of it and mix with your color, and instead of getting that light airy look of layered glazes, instead you get a thick milky look of mixed white with your color. And that's why I use this instead. Switching modes back to this seaweed stuff now, and maybe some of the bottom area. I'm going to add some definition to the seaweed, just like I did on the right side. I've got my number 0 small brush, fine tip brush, and I'm just dry brushing to create shading along this air pocket kelp bubble. And then I'm letting it fade into this more distant stuff up above. I'm not going to create too much definition up there because I like the ambiguity of the shadows. But in this mid-zone area, this is where I'm going to be doing some work. Not too much in the forefront either, because I've got my coral down there, as well as the mermaid that I'm going to start working on in a second. And some more of the bubbles over here. Again, letting that melt into the shadows that I have already established. Since it got a little bit dark there, I'm blending it out with water. And I think I like it like that. Maybe a little bit more on this guy over here. This guy made it sound like this sky. Some of these smaller little bits. And this is just my clean, damp brush that I'm using to soften by lightly brushing over those areas that I just painted.